The invisible altar. Who we are when no one is watching. This old farmhouse makes a sound before dawn. It isn't the wind, though the wind here has its own vocabulary. This sound comes through the morning light, streaming through the newly green trees. The sound makes shadows like meandering frequencies along the floorboards. The sound doesn't come from the horses, though they are awake before I am, standing in the geometry of comfort they've arranged for themselves in the dark. The sound comes from the house itself. It's the noise that 200 years of timber and stone make as it settles into the warm spring ground at the foundation. The house continually adjusts to stay upright. I've been learning this year to notice the sounds moving beneath the surface of things. Indigo, our little cat, spent her early weeks at the new farm pressed against my side, purring. The sound she made was different from the lazy, sunlit purring of a cat who has found a warm patch of afternoon. The sound she made was urgent and pleading and low, a frequency I felt through my bones. And like an answer to old wishes, she started making biscuits against the duvet every night, her paws rhythmic and insistent, a small weaver at a loom of linen. I took the motion as a sign that she considered me her familiar and felt safe with me. After a year of high-velocity loss, I thought Indigo's purring was the sound of peace. I thought she was telling me that we could rest now because we'd finally taken root in the right ground. All of that might have been true in a way, but more importantly, I didn't know at the time that her purr was a war cry. A few weeks after I delighted in her finally making biscuits, a vet informed us that Indigo had developed FIP, feline infectious peritonitis, an uncommon immune response to the common coronavirus. It had been slowly dismantling Indigo from the inside for weeks, maybe months. The diagnosis made me reconsider her sudden onset purring and biscuit making. I replayed our nightly bedtime ritual in my head. A cat's purr vibrates between 25 and 150 hertz, a frequency that has been shown to stimulate bone density, accelerate tissue repair, and reduce inflammation. When she amped up the purring and kneading, it wasn't a sign that Indigo was finally contented and settling in. Instead, her body was intuitively in triage. She was crouched at her own invisible altar, using the only instrument her body had, knitting herself back together in the dark while I lay there interpreting her pain as gratitude. I get it, Indigo. I've spent most of this year doing the same thing. There is a specific madness in being a coach who focuses on nervous systems while watching your own perimeters come apart at the seams. I know all the buzzwords for dysregulation. I know the signs our bodies give when we're in a state of continual watchfulness, our tight jaws and shallow breathing, the way our limbs will keep moving when nothing at all is fine. I daily walk clients towards recognizing that capability is often just a very sophisticated coping mechanism, wearing responsibility's clothes. I know all of this, and I still spent the better part of a year purring into the dark, hoping I could knit myself back together again. I've gone through the list of things that landed us here at Lavender Hill too many times as I sit down to write. My teeth cracked from clenching against the hidden sounds of it all. And I mean that literally. Ask my dentist. I have pulled a paper gown around me in a waiting room that smelled like antiseptic and worry as I stared at the other women around me, fingers crossed against a mammogram. I came home to an anonymous letter threatening legal action over fences and absent shelters, written by someone confusing the aesthetics of a farm with its soul. I look like I'm handling it. I keep showing up. From the outside, I am purring, but the sleeping dragon at the base of my spine stays coiled, its golden eye never closing. Stable Roots is written from Lavender Hill, where the floors are creaking and the horses know things. If this found you at the right moment, consider subscribing or forwarding it to someone who needs it too. I'm just glad that you're here. The horses show me the magic of internal regulation every day. I watched them long before I confused Indigo sounds with comfort. When the wind picks up on the ridge and the old trees start groaning and swaying, the horses stand still, dropping their heads down low. Their postures follow the weather. When the wind has passed, they sigh a deep, rib-rattling exhale that moves through the whole body. You can see it travel like a wave, shedding the external noise and returning to themselves. The movement is a biological prayer, as if their bodies are saying, I was somewhere else for a moment, and now I'm back. As humans, we have largely lost our cultural permission to do the same. We are raised inside a mythology of handling it, of being fine, of getting on with things. Regulation has been aestheticized. It looks like a clean house, a consistent workout schedule, a calm voice in a difficult meeting. It looks like productivity, composure, and the ability to hold the thread of your life without publicly unraveling. The nervous system doesn't care about any of this. It just wants you to breathe. What I've come to understand this year, slowly and at some cost, is that our invisible altars, the states our nervous system draws us into for rest, isn't constructed in places of peace. You won't find it on a meditation cushion, a yoga mat, or a beautifully built morning routine. That altar is the triage unit of the soul. It's where you go when you're out of options, when you've lost the energy to pretend. It's a wholly unglamorous state of being. Sometimes it's just a pause, and other times it's standing in a field with a horse or a dog or a cat in the dark, not doing anything but breathing in the same air. It sometimes looks like counting out pills, bitter little seeds of hope for a cat whose body is trying to destroy itself, and deciding that you will fight for her, alongside her. And that decision alone is enough. Christopher and I are no longer in the hotel breakfast phase of love. That version of us, the one that existed in a shiny, laminated world of early partnership, where you're still each other's best audience, got lost somewhere between the hurricane and the hospice bed where my father spent his final December. What we have now is different and, in many ways, better. He watches me count out the GS 44, 15, 24 pills and doesn't ask me to also fix the fences. He knows because he has watched carefully the difference between when I'm handling something and when I'm acting fine. And he stopped pretending he can't tell. You don't capture that kind of love in a photograph. It doesn't make for an interesting caption. But it is the only kind I trust anymore. Love that can sit still in a triage unit with you without needing to be busy with something else. I think that the women who stood on the porch of this farmhouse in 1825 didn't have the luxury of performing wellness. They were too busy surviving. In the immediacy of living, you either regulate or you don't. And if you don't, the consequences are immediate and real. Those women built invisible altars out of necessity. The bread they needed in the dark hours before anyone else was awake, the garden that was also a pharmacy, their way of standing at the window in the evening as they watched the light stream through the trees. They did this for restoration, a momentary breath, a dose of wonder. They called these habits different things than we call them now, or they didn't call them anything at all because naming felt like idleness. But they did it. As proof, the house is still standing. I think about this when I consider the letter that arrived, chastising me for not doing enough, while my to-do list was already a form of ambient noise. The bones of this house have stood for 200 years without seeking validation from the uninformed. The women who lived here before me didn't ask for permission to exhale. Here is what I now know. The crash course in creating an invisible altar that I didn't know when we pulled into this driveway with everything we had left. Regulation is not the absence of distress. Regulation is the willingness to be in contact with distress without being consumed by it. The purr is not always a sign of peace. Productivity is not always a sign of health. The steady hand is not always a sign of groundedness. Sometimes the most alive thing you can do is to stop seeking stability and drop into the unsteady place beneath it, the place where the vital noise lives, your invisible altar. It's in this honest dark that we begin to heal. Indigo's purr is quieter now as the pills do their unseen work. I hear the different tones in her rumble as her body refuses to accept its own dissolution. At a little under 8 pounds, she fights something ancient, internal, and enormous, with nothing but the instrument of her own frequency. Each night as she curls beside me on the bed, I lie there and I feel it move through me. And I think, yes, that is the sound. That is exactly what this sounds like. It doesn't come with a chime or a certificate, just the ongoing, unglamorous, bone-level work of remaining whole. The fences can wait. The horses know where they belong. The house remains standing. And I have finally learned how to find my altar in unadorned moments. In the deep exhale before I go inside, in the dark hour before the house wakes up, in the small and private gestures that no one sees and no one will write a caption about, in the purr that holds me together. Who are we when no one is watching? We are the frequency we choose to hold. We are the altar we return to. We are the exhale that moves down through our body out to the ground and deeper still into the sounds beneath us. We are the choices that bring us back to the sovereignty of our own skin. The rest is just fence line waiting to be pieced back together at the mercy of the wind. The fence will always need fixing. Love, Kim. Identifying your altar. This week, I invite you to look at your own kneading, your own making biscuits. Where are you performing the motions of being okay while your nervous system is actually in a state of frantic triage? Give yourself a little audit. Notice the tension in your jaw or the rhythm of your productivity. Is it coming from a place of overflow, or is it a purr meant to knit together a breaking heart? And explore your practice. Find your biological altar, like a horse's sigh or a cat's frequency. Find one movement today that is purely for your own regulation, the person you are when no one is watching, and honor that state for how it keeps you whole.